The way that I like to describe it with addiction is it's like if you have a can of paint and you put it down on the ground really hard and the paint splatters everywhere. That addiction splatters everywhere. It splatters on everybody. There's so many different people that are affected, situations that are affected. And, the thing for me is like, I had seen the real Scotty, like the Scotty that loved Jesus, that served him, that knew that God had a plan for his life. Like I had seen that. And this other Scotty was not the real Scotty, and I kept praying like, Lord, this cannot be the way this story ends.
Hey, housewives, come on in. The dirty dishes are still in the sink from yesterday and the laundry is still in the basket. Pop your AirPods in and make yourself at home here.
I'm Tracy.
I'm Tori. And we are your Unlikely Housewives.
Stepping out in faith and believing that God calls the unlikely, we are here to show you the appreciation and validation you deserve, lead you to authentic relationships, and release you of believing the cultural lies to restore your faith and wellness.
Pull up those high-waisted yoga pants, tighten your top knot, and reheat your coffee for the third time. Turn up the volume, and let's go. Hey, housewives.
Hey.
This is a little bit of a different intro for you guys because we have started our original interview with Jennifer, who you are absolutely going to fall in love with, was in September. And this is obviously coming out much later. And so you're going to hear a lot about how God orchestrated and ordained the timing of it, because we were not supposed to record in September, but there was definitely a clear story that he wanted to give our listeners. And so definitely listen to the entire episode with that frame in mind. And then we want you to know that of all things, God is still in the story and still redeeming things.
You do need to just really go into this episode open-minded and open your heart to hearing the story that Jennifer shares, how she met her husband while he was incarcerated, and the journey that God took her on waiting for him. She waited for him. She has loved him through all of his trials and just his addiction. And it's real, guys. It's real. There's a lot of marriages that really struggle with hard stuff. And Jennifer is just a kind, vulnerable soul who is willing to share and encourage women who are going through hard things. That is what she does through her coaching business. You're going to hear during this episode that she was in one of the hardest spots. And that was the story that the Lord wanted us to do on the podcast. But we're here to tell you almost 60 days later now that Scotty is home from rehab. He's doing outpatient and they are thriving and they're, celebrating all their small wins each day. And we're just excited for you to hear this episode. It's for the one who is standing by her man.
Enjoy.
Hey, housewives. Hey, welcome back.
Welcome back. Oh, how God's timing is perfect.
Always.
Always. This interview was actually scheduled for June. It is no longer June. And had we done this episode, an interview with this incredible woman, we would not be having the same conversation. And we'll explain all that here in a little bit. But we just want to say that knowing how incredibly God's timing is. So that being said, this is a very different episode than we had originally intended, and we're going to record anyway, because clearly that's what God has set before us. So I just want to introduce, and Tracy will make her formal introduction and read her bio, but thank you so much for being with the Unlikely Housewives today, Jennifer Shook. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so this is Jennifer, and she is an inner healing mentor, Christian life coach, and a speaker who helps women navigate the deep pain of addiction, betrayal, and family crisis. She walks alongside those who feel isolated in their struggles, women who love God but feel unseen, ashamed, or unable to be real in their church communities.
Through inner healing prayer, mentorship, and authentic conversations, Jennifer creates a safe space where women can process their grief, release control, and rediscover their true identity in Christ. Her mission is to break the silence around struggles the church often avoids while guiding women to break free from religious expectations, striving, and performance, leading them toward true healing, freedom, and restoration. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much.
Wow. I just want to be like, yes. And we need more. Can we have 10 more of you, 20 more of you, 100 more of you? And I think that our series, the You Are Not Alone series for the one who has been an example of that. And I think hope for our audience and listeners that they are not alone. And there are individuals like yourself who are bringing to light the conversations that are hushed in the church pews. And just want to, before we even get started, just want to say thank you so much for your authenticity and your vulnerability and for your obedience. In all honesty, just your sheer obedience of showing up and giving exactly what God has called you to do. So just thank you. Thank you, Jennifer, for that.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me again. I've learned that when I'm vulnerable, it opens up others to be vulnerable. And even if it's scary, but there's somebody out there that needs to hear our story, no matter who we are. And so the deeper I'm willing to go, I've learned that it just really, that's what people need. And that's what people connect to,
Yeah.
Oh, and that's why we did this episode, is because we kept having these conversations with people, but even before meeting, the incredible guests that we've had on. And these stories are everybody feels alone. You feel isolated. You feel by yourself in your certain scenario, because why would anybody else go through what I go through? And the truth is, there are a lot that have addiction and struggles and, major family crisis that we walk through, that if you're doing it alone, it feels like a much bigger problem because you're keeping it so tight and in that dark space, versus like bringing it to light, bringing it to someone that you can be vulnerable with, that can say, I see you, let's walk through it together.
Yes, absolutely. Totally agree.
Well, let's go ahead and start for our listeners. Go all the way back to the story from the very beginning of how you met your husband.
Okay. It was fall of 2000. At the time, I was a single mom. My daughter was about to be 5. And I had gone on this retreat with my church. I was really involved in my church. I grew up in church. I'm a church girl, church kid from the Midwest,
Yeah.
And so I had gone to this retreat, and it was really impactful because it was like a turning point for me of just really letting go of the past, all the mistakes I had made. I was a single mom, and that I carried so much shame and so much guilt for that. My daughter's father was not involved in her life. And so that retreat was really a place where I was able to let go of the past, forgive myself. I got rebaptized again, and then was ready to really embrace what God had for me. And I started to believe again that God had a plan for me and that I hadn't completely screwed up my life, And so,
isn't that amazing? That's such an incredible feeling.
Yeah.
Again, and I know I've said it 1,000 times. My favorite Christian meme is that God has already factored in my stupidity.
Yeah.
He already knew. Oh my gosh, he already knew I was going to screw up this royally and do this so wrong. That just gives me so much hope and encouragement.
I know.
When I continue to put my yes. So anyways, sorry. I have to.
Isn't it amazing? Like, here I am. I literally have been in the church since I was in the womb, and I'm believing all these lies. I had no clue about grace. It was just really all about rules and expectations for me. Like, I believed that if I was a good girl and I followed all the rules and did everything God wanted me to do, then he was happy with me. But if I didn't and I messed up, then he's mad, and that was how I lived. And so,
was this church the church you grew up in, the same church that you went on this retreat with?
No.
Okay.
I grew up in Indiana, Illinois area, and then I moved to Texas. So So yeah, totally different churches. And really, I just don't really remember hearing a whole lot about grace growing up. Like I just don't, it was really, it was very much instilled in me about performance and striving. And I just always remember feeling like I just could not measure up. Like I'm just not getting it right, and like, when am I going to eventually get it right? And that feeling is awful. And when you finally realize, well, that's not even who God truly is, that's amazing, right? Like just the realization of, okay, well, God doesn't expect that of me either. And so why am I living that way? So about a month after that retreat, a friend of mine that I went to church with, she had a friend that she grew up with, and he was in prison. His name is Michael. And he led my husband to the Lord in prison. And so my husband, his name is Scotty, and he was in prison with Michael, and Michael led him to the Lord. They started doing Bible studies together daily. And my friend Loretta, she was in contact with Michael again. They were communicating. Michael had a picture of me and my friend Loretta in his Bible. And Scotty told Michael, I'm going to write that girl. I'm going to marry that girl. And Michael's like, no, dude, I don't think you are. Because he had asked me before, everybody in prison wants a pen pal, right? Like, and I had said no in the past, but this time when my friend came to me and she's like, hey, this guy wants to write you. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to write him. I'm not going to ever meet him, right? This is just going to be my ministry. And so I decided to say yes. And so I got a letter from him. We started writing. And what happened was we just started sharing. So like he knew my whole story through letters. And then he was, he was sharing his story with me, and he was a new believer at the time. So we shared a lot about that, just back and forth in letters. There were no phones in the prison system at the time, so we weren't talking on the phone. It was just letters. And so then, I remember telling God, like, wow, God, this is like somebody that I would love to be with. Why is he in prison? Why did you have to bring somebody into my life that is actually in prison? Like, why couldn't this have happened out here?
Yeah.
And he's telling me in his letters, I really want you to come visit me. And I'm curious now by this point. I'm like, well, I wonder what his voice sounds like. And yeah, I really do want to meet him. And so that's how it started. I went to visit him in February of 2021. That was our first visit. And I continued visiting him for years after that. And I had no clue about prison. I didn't know how it worked. All I knew at the time was that he was going to be up for parole in about 18 months. And I'm thinking, well, that's a long time, but okay. I really felt like God had brought him into my life. And the day he told me he loved me, he came out to our visit and he quoted Romans 16:2. And it was, the verse that God gave him that was just confirmation that I was supposed to be in his life. And he told me that he had messed up everything in his life and he didn't want to mess up this. He was trying to live for God, and even in prison, it's not easy to live for God. Like, it's easy to get drugs. It's easy to get alcohol. It's easy to get anything in prison. And so it actually is a choice to surrender, even in prison. And so what ended up happening that 18 months that I thought, I'm like, okay, well, God brought him into my life. Surely he's going to bring him home in 18 months, right? Well, 8.5 years later is when he came home from prison.
Wow.
Yes.
I did not know it was that long.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was going to be that long. I think God knew better than to tell me up front. Like, if I would have known that,
right.
I would have been like, no way am I going to wait 8.5 years. I was young.
General question that I'm sure other people have. Did any other men come into your life in those 8.5 years that you're like, well, maybe I'll just go date because this man's available?
Yeah. You know what? I am such a loyal person that I didn't even put myself in situations like that to where it would be an option, because I just was so committed and loved him so much and knew that God was going to do something miraculous. Like, I just believed it with everything in me. And so, those 8.5 years, when you're living in it, you don't like every year he would come up for parole, and we would be praying, and there were people in my life that were praying. And so every time I would believe, okay, this is it. He's going to be coming home. And then he would get a set off for another year. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to wait another year. So when you're in it like that, it's like, I remember him telling me one time, it was probably 4 or 5 years into it. And he said, if you want me to let you go, I will. I know this is hard. But by that point, I'm like, no, I mean, there's just so many God.
Yeah, I'm invested at this point. I put the time in. Yeah. Okay. What was he in prison for?
He was in prison for robbery. He had a heroin addiction. His life was the complete opposite of my life. He grew up in abuse. He grew up in trauma. He started drinking and doing drugs when he was 9 years old. I mean, just a baby, and he never knew his biological father. There were just so many traumatic things that happened in his life. So he had, and the time that I met him was his 4th time in prison. He had been in and out since he was 18. This was the longest time he had been in. So he actually got a 48-year sentence when I met him. And the reason was because he was a repeat offender. Yeah, he was a repeat offender. He had been in and out so much. He had like 7 counts of robbery because he's trying to feed his addiction. And
is he in the Texas prison system?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Also makes a difference.
Prison system. Yes, which is tough, right?
Yeah.
And when I met him in 2000, he had already been in 6.5 years. So his total time was a little over 15 years. So yeah, when I think back to when I first met him and then the 8.5 years later, like both of us were completely different people. Like I was not the same woman when I met him.
Right.
Yeah.
I was 25 when I met him. He was 34. So he's 9 years older than me. I had gone through that journey. That's when I really began my journey into learning about grace and identity and finding out what God truly said about me. Like he was on that journey with me, Mm-hmm. And one of the defining moments for me in the beginning was I had prayed since my daughter was born. She was born in 1995. She was almost 5 when I met him. I had prayed that whoever God brought into my life, that man had to be her father. He had to love her like his own because her father was not in her life. So that was like one of my top things. God, you've got to bring me a man who will love her like his own child. And I remember telling God, like, I don't want to date. God, just bring me. And it's so interesting, right? Like you can't date when somebody's in prison. So God answered that in a weird way. But there was a day I was sitting probably just a few months into it. And I was at a visit with him. And I had sent him a picture of my daughter. And he came out to the visit and he told me that he couldn't understand it, but he just had this overwhelming feeling of love for her and this desire to love and protect her like his own child. Like he literally said the exact words that I prayed for. And I'm like bawling at the visit because I'm like, wow, God, you care about the smallest things, like down to the exact words that I prayed for. He said it. And the other really cool thing is that he understands, like he did not grow up with his biological father. He never knew. In fact, last summer, he just found out who his biological father is at 58 years old. It's crazy.
Wow.
So he could relate to what my daughter was feeling. He knew what that felt like. And I just think that was such a God thing. And, God amazingly gave my parents peace because
Exactly. Like you don't even get to bring him home. Like, hey, Mom and Dad, meet my boyfriend. Like
guess what, Mom?
Yeah, guess.
So did you let her read your letters, or what did you do to get her to believe that you knew this guy?
Yeah. So when I told my parent, I told him early on, like they kind of, I was definitely a rebel at heart, like they were not surprised when I came and told them, that I was going to do this. I was a pretty strong-willed child and just like, okay, here's Jennifer and her next thing, but I told them, I love this man. He loves me. He's going to be in my life. So you guys get involved. I would love for you to get involved and meet him or not. But either way, he's going to be in my life. And so my mom, she jumped in and she's like, okay, well, I'm going to write him and I'm going to go visit him. So she started to write him. She went to visit him with me. And after her first visit, she loved him. Like, it's crazy the amount of peace that God gave both of my parents. It took my dad about a year. Like, my dad was not for it at all, which of course, what father would be for that. About a year later, he went to a visit with me to meet Scotty for the first time, which was like nerve-wracking driving there. I'm like, okay, how's this going to go? What are we going to say? And so we were there, and there was probably 20 minutes into the visit, I get up and I go get some more snacks and drinks. And so gave them some time to talk. And when I asked Scotty later what he said, well, your dad asked me, what's this all about? What are your intentions? I have a granddaughter. I'm concerned about my granddaughter, about my daughter. Like, what are you really after? Kind of question,
Yeah.
And Scotty told him, he said, you know what? Of course you're concerned. It would be weird if you're not concerned, like, you're her father. And so they had a very real conversation. And after that visit, my parents started going to visit him on their own. Like, probably every few months, they would go see him. They built their own relationship with him. There were men that were getting out of prison that knew Scotty, and Scotty would give them our contact information. Like, there were guys that ended up going to our church. My dad ended up helping a lot of these guys. I mean, the only way to even describe a story like this is that God gave them peace. He gave them peace about all of it, and it helped, of course, that they were in a relationship with him too. They were talking to him. They were visiting him. They got to hear his story from him. And my dad was on staff at our church at the time. So my dad was sharing with all the other pastors. Like, people knew Scotty before he ever came home. So when he came home in 2009, it's like he just walked into this major support system. People knew who he was. They knew his story. They already loved him. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. And they had never met him in person. They just heard about him. And so, he walked into our church just already being known and being loved and supported, which was such a huge blessing for both of us. We all need that support. Yeah.
So Michael is the one who led Scotty to know Jesus, meet him, know him, fall in love with him, start walking with him. And how long, was Scotty clean since he went in to prison, or did it take a while? Like, what was that story?
Yeah, it took a while. Scotty was known in the prison system for running drugs. Like, he was running drugs through the prison system. So he, was getting himself in a lot of trouble in there before he met Jesus. And so when he got saved, it was God literally delivered him from everything: cigarettes, alcohol, drugs. In prison, you can make your own alcohol. They call it hooch. And so delivered him of that, all of it, just completely had no desire at all for any of it. And so that definitely has played a part even in these last 7 years of our story, where I think that was how God delivered him the first time. And it's kind of like, okay, well, he wants that again, like, it was just an instant deliverance. And why can't that happen now? And that's not happening this time. It's different.
So let's go into that. So as we prefaced this interview, is that had we recorded when we originally had this schedule, this would be a much different episode. But in that time since then, he has relapsed. And he is in rehab now as we speak.
Yes.
Can you, as far as what happened? Like, how?
Well, and kind of give us a timeline too, because he was I mean, he was clean for years and you built a life post.
Yeah.
When he came
got
out. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that, then fast forward to here.
Yeah. Yeah. So when he came home in 2009, he had built houses with his dad and his stepdad and his grandpa growing up. So he found jobs really quickly. He was good at that. Even though he had been in prison for 15 years, he got a job right away. He started building his own business, his own construction business. And then he also was a drug abuse counselor for 7.5 years. And he helped a lot of people get sober. He quit that job in 2017. And that definitely, I believe now looking back, played a part, because he needs that in his life. He needs to be able to give back, to use his story. We were doing prison ministry together. We went into prisons. We even went into the prison that I met him at, and we got to share our story there, which was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a lot of prison ministry, and people knew our story. And it was like the Jen and Scotty story. It's so inspiring. They're so amazing. Like, we were definitely up on this pedestal. And when he first relapsed in 2018, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like, this is not an incredible story now, God. Now what are we going to tell people? Like, this is not very inspiring, And so what happened in 2018 was he'd already given up that drug abuse job, and he was just doing construction. And we were still going to church. We had life group. We had great community. We were living life. And
by this time, your daughter is an adult, right?
Yeah. She had just graduated from Baylor University at the time. And we had just come back from Hawaii. The three of us went to Hawaii on this celebration trip to celebrate her graduation. It was amazing. And then right before that trip, he had started drinking alcohol. And we talked about it for like 6 months. He brought it up to me 6 months prior, and he's like, you know what? I think I just want to be able to have a beer every once in a while. And alcohol was not something that he had a problem with in the past. He was a heroin addict, right? And so, but we talked about it over and over. I asked him a bunch of questions like, well, do you feel like that would be a relapse if you drank? No, I think I can handle it. I think I'll be okay. But what I didn't know was internally, he was having a lot of issues. Like, when he got saved in prison, he just believed, well, I've forgiven everybody. I'm saved now. The past is in the past, and I'm moving forward with Jesus, right? And so, but all of that trauma and all of that pain was in there. And he thought he was okay, but he wasn't okay. And when he started drinking, he was okay in the beginning, but then, months started going by. And then after we got back from Hawaii, that April of 2018, it just kind of I started picking up on things. He didn't seem right. He was drinking more. And what he realized later on is that he's not okay with alcohol. He's not okay with anything. All of it is an open door for him. He can't have any of it. But, it took him spiraling out of control for him to come to that conclusion. So in 2018, the day that changed everything for me, and I remember dates, important dates that just, this one was a traumatic date. June 3rd, 2018, he had a motorcycle. And so on June 2nd, that night, he had gone out on a motorcycle ride, which wasn't unusual. It was, the unusual part was it was later. It was like 10 o'clock at night. But he's like, I'm just going to go for just a little ride, not far. Well, he didn't come home until almost 2 a.m. And I'm like, okay, this has never happened before, ever. And I knew something was off. I knew something was wrong. When he comes home, he tells me he was just riding his motorcycle. I'm like, no. The next morning, he wakes up and he's crying. And he says, I feel like such a fake. He was at a strip club. And I'm like, I immediately called our best friends, Dan, Cindy. We've been in life group with them forever. And I said, we got to come over. We got to pray. We got to talk about this right now. And we went over to Dan and Cindy's house. We prayed. We talked. I just remember being in so much shock, because if anybody would have ever told me your husband's going to start going to strip clubs, your husband's going to cheat on you. Your husband's going to relapse. He's going to do all these things. I would have gone to my grave telling you there is no way he would ever do any of those things. I had no clue about addiction. I had never lived through it before. I didn't even know what I was living in at first. It probably took me about 3 years to really even know, like, oh, this is the cycle of addiction I'm in. Like, you don't even know what you're living in. So when this started, and I was all about rescuing him. Like, okay, we're going to get you help. We're going to get you a counselor. You're going to start going to meetings. Like, I wasn't even thinking about myself. It was all
You've
about.
been married how long?
At this time, we had actually gotten married while he was in prison. I did leave that part out. In 2006, we got married by proxy. We signed papers. My dad was the pastor that signed our marriage certificate. And then when he came home in 2009, we had a wedding. So from 2000, at this point, we had been married 12 years.
Okay.
And he had been home about 9 years. Okay. So yeah, it just was all about him. I didn't think I needed help. I'm like, he's the one with the problem. We've got to get him help. And I was doing all of it for him. And I did that for several years. And it wasn't until June of 2021. So he had gone to rehab in May of 2021. And he was only there for like 3 weeks. And I thought that was the answer. Like, everything that I was doing for him, I always thought, okay, this is it, right? Like, this counselor, we were going to counselors together. He was going to a counselor on his own. I was not going to meetings at the time. He was going to 12-step meetings. But that June, when he went to rehab, and I thought, okay, yes, this has got to be it. This is the answer. He comes home 3 weeks later, he's already relapsed again, and he's drinking and he's going out and he's staying out all night. And I'm like, okay, God, I have tried it all. Like, I've tried to take my hands off. I've tried to control everything. I've tried to stay really silent. I've gotten really loud. I've done all the things I know to do. Nothing's working. I've got to go get help. And so I started to go to Al-Anon, which is 12-step for the families of alcoholics. And there's most of the people there also are dealing with not just alcohol, but also drugs. And so I just dove right into that, got me a sponsor, started going to meetings all the time, started to learn more about addiction. And it was really helpful for me to sit in the rooms with the other people and just, like, I remember my first meeting I went to, and I'm listening to the other people and I'm like, yeah, I've done that. I've gone crazy checking his location. I've looked at phone records before. I've checked bank accounts like that. I've done all these crazy things. Like, I never have peace because I'm constantly just trying to figure out what's going to happen next. Mm-hmm. And these people were saying the same things. And I'm like, okay, they get it. These people completely get it. And I felt so much peace just sitting in that room, knowing that I was going to be understood here,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so his addiction spiraled up until the summer of 2022. By this time, it's no longer just alcohol. He's on meth, he's on Adderall, he's on all kinds of things. And
still living at home.
But we were living like roommates, like there was just, I was trying to set boundaries. And before all of this, I would have told you I'm pretty good at boundaries. I know how to set boundaries. I'm a pretty responsible person. Like, I don't just let people walk all over me. But boundaries in marriage is totally different and a little bit harder to figure out. And then you add addiction into all of that. And you're like, I don't know what to do. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, if I tell him to leave, that for me, that meant he could go back to prison for the rest of his life, and my life will be forever changed and we will no longer be together. Like, mm-hmm. That was a thought that was always in my mind because he was still on parole. And the other thought is he's going to die. He's either going to die or go back to prison. So if I say you have to leave, that's what that means. That's like completely surrendering to God that fear. And, I would have been the first to say before that I trust God. I know God's got my back. He's got a plan for me. But when you're in that situation where you're thinking, if I tell my husband to leave, he could die, it's a whole nother level of trust.
Yeah.
Like it was everything.
Life or death. It's life or death. You're putting and you're saying, okay, God, like no matter the outcome of this, like I'm okay with it. And it's that you feel like you're saying, I'm okay if you take him.
Yeah.
And that's different.
It's totally different. And it wasn't just a one-time surrender. It was a daily surrender, and sometimes more than once a day. One thing that God did for me in 2018, right before he relapsed, I had gone to a retreat with my friend Cindy, and it was an amazing retreat. The woman that led that retreat, her name is Lene, and she is a coach, a life coach, but she did inner healing. And so I started coaching with her a few weeks after that retreat, right before Scotty relapsed, which was a total God thing, because that is when I really started to deal with some major beliefs that were off in my life. Like my view of God, even at this point, I had done a lot of work already. I had done, lies and truth and a lot of identity work up to this point, but there was a whole nother layer that God was after. And one of the biggest lies that came out in my very first session with her was that I believed that God was my punisher. And the thing about inner healing, I had never experienced this before. I had no clue what it was. And sometimes people call it freedom prayer. Sometimes people call it sozo. It's called different things. But basically, it's inviting Jesus into a memory, and it's asking him to show you, when was the first time you believed that? Where did it start? Where did it start that I believed that God was my punisher? And he just brings up this memory in my mind of me as a child. And we walk through that memory, we pray, we invite Jesus into it, we identify lies. It was amazing. Like I walked out of that first session completely blown away. I didn't even know that memory that God brought up in my mind. I would have never even thought that is where that lie started. But Jesus knows. He knows, right?
Yeah.
And so I know that God doing that in me really did put me on a different path moving forward, because if I would have walked through this addiction thing believing that God is my punisher, I don't even know if I'd be sitting here right now talking to you because I probably would have given up a long time ago, right? Like I would have just been angry. God, how dare you do this to me? Like, really one more thing you're going to make me go through in my life? Like, that's the way I would have thought about it. But I did coaching with Lene every month. I continued to go to retreats that she did. And it was women from all different kinds of churches, just coming together because they wanted to grow in their relationship with the Lord and they wanted more. I'm still connected to those women. I'm still connected to Lene. That's what, put a fire inside of me to also do that for other women in my own coaching. We don't just talk. We also pray. We do inner healing like I walked through. And there's so much freedom when Jesus knows exactly where to take you. He knows where something started. He knows things that we don't even know that are just so subconscious. We press them down so much, but he only brings up what he wants to heal. He's not going to bring up things to re-traumatize us over and over. He'll only bring up what's necessary. And I love that. And so that is a huge part of my story, and it still is. And so the summer, June of 2022 was when I kicked Scotty out of the house, said, I'm not doing this anymore. You got to go. And there had been a lot of infidelity. There had been, with addiction, there's usually not just one addiction. There's more than one that comes with it. And so he left, and about a week later, he got arrested, which was scary because him getting arrested could mean a whole lot of things. It could mean him going back to prison, his parole being revoked, all of that. He ended up being in jail for about a year. When he was gone, I ran our construction business. I had to jump in and do a whole lot of things because the way that I like to describe it with addiction is it's like if you have a can of paint and you put it down on the ground really hard and the paint splatters everywhere, the addiction splatters everywhere. It splatters on everybody. there's so many different people that are affected, situations that are affected. And, you know, the thing for me is like, I had seen the real Scotty, like the Scotty that loved Jesus, that served him, that knew that God had a plan for his life. Like I had seen that. And this other Scotty was not the real Scotty, you know? And I kept praying like, Lord, this cannot be the way this story ends. This cannot be how this ends. Refuse to accept that. Like, did you really take us through 8.5 years of prison and then all of this stuff just for him to go back to prison for the rest of his life, or for him to die? Or I remember my prayers eventually got to the point where I just said, God, do whatever you have to do, but don't kill him and don't send him back to prison. But whatever else, do it. And that's what he did. He didn't send him back to prison. He was in a county jail for a year, but he did not go back to prison. And then when he went to jail, it gave us the opportunity to reconnect. Like, he was resurrendering to God. He was sobering up. He had a lot of alone time, him and God, right? God put him in this little country jail. Like, it was so amazing. Like, if I were to describe it, all I can say, it was like Mayberry, like Andy Griffith and Barney Fife. Like,
Oh my gosh.
you walk in and like, I've been to a lot of prisons, right? And I'm walking into this little jail and there's like the little sheriff guy says, I had to sign in with a pencil, you know, like he didn't even ask me for my ID. He's like just the sweetest little guy. And I'm like, okay, this is a different experience, you know, like I could call the jail and they knew exactly who Scotty was. I could ask, how's he doing? It was just, I'm like, God, you're so good. Like, yes, he's in jail. This sucks, but you've put him in a jail where if he were here in San Antonio, Texas, where I'm at, and if he were in that county jail, it would not have been this experience.
Yeah.
Even the food was good there. He said the food was the best he had ever had in jail. And so I'm like, God just took care of him in such a major way and just poured out so much love on him, on both of us during that time. And so we started to be able to talk again, you know, like he started finally taking responsibility for the things he had done. Because when you're dealing with someone in addiction, everything is your fault. Everything was my fault. Like, and that sucks. I mean, it just does, you know, when there's just so much gaslighting and so much blame. And it's because, you know, he didn't want to take ownership for the things he was doing because he knew he was still in his addiction. And so he finally was owning up to it. He was repenting. He was asking for forgiveness. He was like the reality of the choices that he made were finally hitting him and he was owning them.
Yeah.
And so he started to rebuild relationships while he was there, even with our daughter, Jordan, with my parents, with our friends, with me. And then when he came home a year later, like I was excited, you know, like I was ready for him to be home. I was ready for this new beginning. That's what it felt like. Yeah.
And that was 2023. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was the summer of 2023. And then we were doing really good for a while. But one thing I've learned about myself too, is that I need to have better boundaries. You know, like I think that I put so much focus on all the things he went through. I would say things like, well, he's been through so much trauma. He's been through so much pain. He needs to get more help. So I would like let him off the hook for a lot of things because of that, you know, like I would make excuses for him. And it wasn't like I even knew I was doing it in the moment. You know, it's just me looking back on things and seeing how, like when he came home from jail that time, like he needed more accountability. He needed, you know, but I was trying to not control things, right? I'm trying not to be a control freak and step back and let him have his own journey and make his own choices and me not be stepping in all the time. It's very tricky. It's tricky when you're walking through something like this, you know?
Well, and I can only imagine, you know, the biggest struggle you would have, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is just trusting that it's not that trusting him that he's going to stay clean, trusting him that God, that you're not going to walk through this again, just being that like fully surrendered, Lord, I trust you. Let's live one day at a time for him, but through all of what you've been through, like I can't imagine just stepping into that with just open arms, open hands, going, okay, God.
Yeah.
Have a great day today. Like, how do you get there?
Yes. Oh my gosh. How do you get there? I think it's a lot of things. I think it's, you have to have people around you. Definitely. Like I did learn this, like I have great community. I have great people around me, and I have for this whole season since 2018. But I also learned that I don't need to tell everybody all the details, which, that quickly became very apparent to me. There were a lot of people that cared about us and would check in on me and would see how things are going, because we were living life with people. People knew what was happening. Yeah. But when you're living in this survival mode, I was living in survival mode, and I had never lived like that before. This was, I was experiencing anxiety, and I had never dealt with anxiety before. I was having problems sleeping, and I had never dealt with that before. And it was this whole new way of life. Now I was constantly on guard, wondering what's going to happen. And so when people would check in on me, it was like I didn't have the energy to keep up with it. And so there were only a few people that knew everything going on in my life. And so everybody else, I just had to make general statements to, like, well, we're doing okay, or keep praying for us, or whatever. And just keep a couple people that could walk with me through this. And that was a big part of it. I could not do it alone. The coaching that I went through with Lene, and just working on myself and asking God, like, dealing with my own roots of stuff. Like, why do I want to control the situation? Why am I so afraid? Why do I feel like I need to rescue everybody else but myself? Really dealing with my own issues. That was another big thing. And then, and just my own time with God. I journaled a lot, lots of praying and just worshiping, and just so many things that I just had to do in my one-on-one time with God, and there were so many ups and downs though. It was not just this, I'm great all the time situation. Like I was mad at God at times. I was yelling at God. I was crying. And there were moments when I had no faith, and the people around me would come along and say, you know what, we're believing with you. We're going to hold your arms up for you right now. And that was really important to me. I wanted people that not only believed in me and were going to support me, but they still believed in Scotty too, because I wasn't ready to give up. And I needed people that were going to believe for his redemption too. Yeah. And that's what I had and still have. Mm-hmm. So about a year ago, I started noticing things were off again. And I tried to analyze in my mind and just saying, no, there's no way that it could be that again, and I talked to myself out of what I actually knew to be true. And what I was feeling was I was feeling addiction again. I could feel it, these small little things. And I had mentioned earlier about him finding out about his biological dad. Well, that was a big, huge thing that had happened last summer. It was really doing a number on him. And he was, having a lot of different feelings. He wasn't, he started working more. That's like the workaholism that he had. That was happening again. That was the very first sign. Because when he first came home from jail, he was just doing one job at a time. He was, home at a decent hour, and that was all changing again. He's all over the place. He's doing all these jobs. He's staying out. He's working late again. But I just kept saying, no, there's no way he wouldn't do that again. He wouldn't risk going back to jail again. There's no way he would risk that. And I kept saying that until in January, it definitely got worse. And I don't even know how to explain it it's like you don't want to believe it so bad. Like the denial that I go into myself, gaslighting myself again and telling myself, no, there's no way. It just must be this. Maybe because he had struggled with some mental illness. Like maybe it's like a manic thing he's going through right now. Maybe he's just in a mania, maybe I don't know. There's just all these different excuses I would make until finally, this summer, it's so obvious. It's so in my face. He's struggling with addiction again. And I had friends from my life group step in and say, Jen, you have got to do something because we don't want to lose you in this. We don't want to lose you in this. And so they helped me face the reality again that he had relapsed and that I needed to do something different. And so I did. That was the beginning of August. And I told him, you've got to go. And he did. And I cried, he cried. It was awful, because again, I'm facing my biggest fear. You might die, you might go back to prison, and I have to release control of that to God. And 2.5 weeks later, he agreed to get help. And that's what sent him back to rehab this time. And that's where he is now. And, there's so many unknowns when you're living in addiction. There's so many what ifs. And one of the things I've learned just being in the recovery community and being around other people struggling with addiction, but also the family members, is there comes a point where you're no longer talking to the person, you're talking to the addiction. And that's so like we think that we can talk them into something like, well, if I just share with him how he's affecting me and I tell him, like, surely you don't want to go back to prison, Scotty. Like, you think you can talk him into it? You think that because that just makes sense. Of course you don't want to go back to prison. Of course you don't want to go through all this again. Mm-hmm. But I'm not talking to Scotty at that point. I'm talking to addiction that has control of him. And I listened to this podcast about addiction that talked about this, where it says your words don't matter. Your words are really only making you feel better. They're not doing anything. That's actually probably making it worse for the addict, because they're just going to have more guilt and more shame and probably go use even more. And so your words aren't going to make a difference. The things that make a difference are boundaries, figuring out what I had to focus on. What do I need right now? What do I need for myself? And safety, emotional safety. I've never felt like unsafe around him physically, but like just the emotional safety. Because we're constantly in that back and forth of, now it's back to everything's my fault again, right? Like if you would just do this, or if you wouldn't, that's another big clue of you're in addiction, dude, because he's not like that when he's sober. He takes responsibility. He owns his stuff, and so I would not wish this on anyone. Addiction is not fun to walk through at all. Not at all.
Well, I feel for you. And clearly we didn't know until this morning, before recording, that you're in this space right now. But what a brave heart you have to just keep showing up, because there's going to be somebody, that's going to be listening and that's going to say, hey, I need to reach out to her, because they're walking through it too. Yeah. So, I mean, what a gift that God has given you, and courage to keep showing up and speaking out, whether you're past it or in it, because the story is that God still wins. Yeah. No matter how the outcome, we say this all the time, it's that we don't know how it's going to end, but God's going to win anyway. And he has a plan, and we're, obviously going to be praying for you as you continue to go through this. And, anybody who wants to come, meet up with you or talk with you, obviously you're in Texas, so clearly
yes,
you do virtually as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Share like what your services are and how, you would be able to provide to women reaching out to you.
Yeah, I work with women now as a coach. And like I shared earlier, doing I can't not pray with these women and do the inner healing stuff that I've experienced on my own journey, because it brings so much freedom. And so I do that. And I also am in the beginning stages of God has really told me to start building a community. And so I'm starting to figure out the pieces of that. And so that is definitely coming. The best way to get a hold of me is to go to my website, jennifershook.com, and my socials are on there. And there's a way to connect with me, set up a call. I love to hear people's stories, just listening, and connecting with women and hearing what their story is. And some of the women that I work with, they're not all dealing with addiction. A lot of them are just dealing with identity issues, but if they are dealing with addiction, the identity issues come along with it, right? Like that definitely goes together. So yeah. And I have some free resources on my website that are available. And so I think it's important for women to feel seen and heard. Mm-hmm. That's a big one. Like most of the women that come to me, they're all Christian women. They're women who are serving in the church. They're women who they say, I want to be a better mom. I want to be a better wife. I want to spend more time with God. I want to feel more connected to God. I want to do and be better. Right. That is like the common theme. Yeah. And learning how to go from doing to being is a part of my own journey. And you guys can probably even relate to that in your own walks with the Lord, right? It's such a big thing in the Christian community. And so that like women need validation. There's just so much, they need to feel seen and heard and validated that the things that they're doing are good enough, and that God is not expecting them to do more, to be more acceptable to him, but that maybe you just need to be still for a little bit. Maybe you just need to like put your to-do list away and put all your expectations away and just sit with God. So taking God out of the box,
we say that a lot too.
Yeah. The thing that I want to remind people too is that it's a spiritual war that we're in, and it's a daily. One of the biggest heartaches of the Christian church is when something comes out about a major Christian figure that, oh my gosh, he's been, cheating on his wife, or he's been addicted to such and such, because we put these people on pedestals. Yeah. And to go back to what you were saying is that when he relapsed the first time, this is no longer an inspirational story. What now? Yeah. Is that we have to remind ourselves that we are all human. Mm-hmm. We all fall short of the glory of God, and will continue to do so on the side of heaven. Yep. And that is not to be discouraging, but to be encouraging that he can redeem all things. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he will. Revelation tells us he will redeem all things. And that when we want to say, there's no second chance for you, or to ourselves, and saying God, that you've screwed up so royally that God can't forgive you. Mm-hmm. Right. That's a lie from the pit of hell as well. Yes. And for us to tell others that, when they are in situations or relationships and just saying, no, there's no way God can redeem this. This is broken and you have to give it up. That's not always the case. Mm-hmm. And God very clearly tells people that I never promised you ease here. I never promised you happiness here. I promised you my joy, and I promised you my peace that is incomprehensible to anyone who does not believe in him. Yes. But it's hard. Mm-hmm. And so I want to encourage those that are listening that probably may not have the exact same situation that you are in. You married a man from prison. It's just through letters. That's real, right? Your story is so incredibly unique. But at the same time, I just wanted to tell people, it's hard. Mm-hmm. Come on, ladies, let's put our big girl panties on and get on your knees, because it's going to be hard. Yeah. Yes. And he's there. He's there in the midst of it. Mm-hmm. And you're 1,000% right. If he had told us from the get-go, which is why he doesn't tell us that it's going to be 8 years, or we're going to wander in the desert for 40 years. Like that's why he doesn't say that, because he's like, I will get you through today.
Right.
Tomorrow, don't worry about tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow will have its own trouble, but I will get you through today.
Yes.
And I want people to get that side and see that out of your story, because he's there for us today. And we're not promised tomorrow. And God uses all things for the glory.
Yes.
For his glory, for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28, by far my life verse.
Yes.
So we will be praying for you, Jennifer.
Thank
you so much for sharing your story in real time.
Yeah.
In real time.
Yeah.
When the wounds are still fresh. And we can't thank you enough. And again, we'll have all of your contact information of where people can contact you and follow you and reach out to you in our show notes. And housewives, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard, but he will use all things. And
yes, he will.
Yes. Well, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank
for all
you.
you've shared and for being here today.
Yep. Until next time, housewives. Bye.
Whether we made you laugh or cry today, we pray you feel appreciated, bolder and braver than yesterday, stronger and more faithful for tomorrow, and living in who you were made to be today.
Join our online community on Facebook, link in the show notes, and be sure to review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you enjoy listening. Until next time, housewives, we give you permission to walk confidently, free, and to be intentional in your slippers or stilettos.